Esther, you call in Esther? Now everybody in town gonna know about this.
When people think of Sanford and Son, they remember Fred Sanford clutching his chest and yelling, "This is the big one, Elizabeth." They remember the junkyard, Lamont's frustration, and Aunt Esther's sharp tongue. But what most fans don't know is that there was a scene so controversial, it was quietly edited out of reruns for decades. For almost 50 years, the networks blurred words, cut lines, and even ended episodes early just to hide it. The cast and creators kept quiet, but recently they admitted what really happened and why it mattered so much. In one courtroom episode, Red Fox delivered a line that was both shocking and powerful. He looked around the room and shouted a racial punchline that made the live audience roar for more than 20 seconds straight. The moment was raw, unfiltered, and it was clear NBC had taken a huge risk airing it. Yet, the truth is that this wasn't just a joke. It was a statement about race, justice, and inequality in America during the 1970s. That line caused chaos inside NBC, scared advertisers, and even sparked heated debates in civil rights groups. Some people saw it as brave and honest, while others felt it reinforced stereotypes. No matter which side you were on, one thing was certain. Television had never seen anything like it. The story of Sanford and Son didn't even begin in the United States. Back in the early 1960s, British viewers were glued to a show called Steptoe and Son. It was about to scrap dealers working in a junkyard in Shepherd's Bush, London. Believe it or not, more than half the country watched it every week. The numbers were so strong that an American producer, Joseph E. Levine, bought the rights. At first, the plan was very different from the show we know today. It wasn't supposed to be about a black father and son. At all, it was written as a white Italian-American family named Albert and Tony Soriano. Executives at the time didn't think a black-led sitcom could survive in primetime television. But things changed in 1971. Producers Bud Yorkin and Norman Lear decided to take a gamble. Lear already had All in the Family with Archie Bunker shaking things up on CBS. They wanted to put a black version of that honesty on television. NBC, desperate to climb out of third place, gave them a chance. Instead of an Italian junkyard, they placed the story in South Central Los Angeles, with Fred and Lamont Sanford taking center stage. That one change flipped the history of television. When Sanford and Son premiered on January 14, 1972, few expected it to succeed. NBC didn't even give it a safe time slot. They aired it on Friday nights at 8 p.m., a time when most shows failed. But what happened shocked the industry. The first episode ranked number 6 in the Nielsen ratings, pulling millions of viewers away from All in the Family. In just 1 week, NBC had a hit. The network had been losing badly to CBS for years, but Fred Sanford gave them hope. By its second season, the show had risen to number 2 in the country, with more than 27 million viewers every week. Advertisers jumped on board, paying more than $50,000 for a 30-second spot, huge money for that time. Beyond ratings, the show made history. It became the first primetime sitcom with an almost all-black cast since the 1950s. Civil rights groups praised it, saying it put real black families and real black voices on TV in a way that had never been done before. Variety magazine even wrote that NBC had integrated America's living rooms. Suddenly, a junk dealer and his son weren't just characters, they were symbols of change. At the heart of the show was Red Fox. He wasn't NBC's first choice. The network originally wanted Broadway actor Calvin Little, but he turned the role down. When producers saw Red Fox perform in Cotton Comes to Harlem, they were blown away. His delivery, his timing, and his ability to mix comedy with real pain made him perfect for Fred Sanford. Fox was only 49 years old at the time, but makeup, gray streaks, and heavy boots turned him into a believable old junk dealer. Every detail of Fred Sanford's look came from those choices, right down to the famous shuffle. Fox brought something else, to his own style. He refused to let white writers control how his character spoke. He ripped up lines, he thought. were fake and replaced them with words that sounded real. If the script didn't match how black families talked, he made sure it got changed. That defiance came with risks, but it also gave the show its authenticity. He wasn't just playing a role, he was showing America a side of life that wasn't normally allowed on television. Then came the episode that fans still talk about. Courtroom scene. Fred Sanford, standing before a judge, looked around at the people in the room and shouted a line about there being enough black men to film a Tarzan movie. The audience reaction was explosive. For nearly half a minute, the studio shook with laughter, so loud that cameras had to stop rolling. But the joke was more than a laugh. It pointed directly at racism in the justice system. At the time, statistics showed black neighborhoods received far more traffic tickets than white ones. Fred's line was a comedy punch, but it also carried a sting of truth. NBC executives panicked. Advertisers like Colgate-Palmolive worried about being linked to it. The FCC might have fined them. But Fox had fought for a contract that gave him final say over his dialogue. He refused to back down. That line went out on national TV uncensored. Later reruns muted it or cut it entirely, but the original was now part of history. Fans who saw it live never forgot it. As groundbreaking as Sanford and Son was, life behind the camera wasn't easy. Most of the show's writers were white, and their scripts often felt unnatural to Red Fox. He openly clashed with them, sometimes ripping pages out during rehearsals. NBC eventually brought in Paul Mooney, a bold black comedian and writer who made the dialogue sharper and riskier. Mooney's lines pushed boundaries, sometimes too far for the network. One of his drafts had Fred warning a white cop, "You're lucky this ain't Mississippi." NBC demanded cuts, but Fox fought to keep the edge. The tension between comedy, truth, and censorship became part of the show's DNA. Off-camera, Fox had constant battles with NBC over money, and even over small things, like his request for a dressing room with a window. These disputes sometimes shut production down for weeks. At one point, Fox even walked away, leaving the show scrambling to replace him temporarily with other characters. Despite the chaos, the magic between Fred and Lamont kept pulling audiences back. The courtroom episode wasn't the only time NBC panicked. In another controversial scene, Aunt Esther confronted Fred and blurted out a racial slur. It went out, uncensored on the East Coast feed, but was quickly edited before it aired on the West Coast. For reruns, NBC replaced the word completely, looping extra footage to cover the gap. Another episode involving Lamont's wedding had Fred insulting the white in-laws with biting racial jokes. Advertisers immediately complained, and that entire scene disappeared from later broadcasts. Over the years, dozens of Sanford and Son episodes were quietly trimmed. By the time reruns hit TV land in the 1990s, more than 40 minutes of material was missing across just one marathon weekend. Networks claimed it was for time, but fans knew the truth: it was censorship. Today, streaming platforms have started restoring those original cuts, sometimes with warnings. Watching them now, you can see how much sharper, riskier, and braver the show really was, compared to the watered-down versions most people grew up with. By the mid-1970s, Sanford and Son was at its peak, almost beating All in the Family for the #1 spot. But success brought new problems. Fox demanded higher pay, NBC pushed back, and tensions grew. By 1977, the show's ratings slipped, and Fox eventually walked away to do his own variety show on ABC. Without him, nothing worked. Spin-offs like Sanford Arms and even reboots like Sanford failed to capture the magic. By the early 1980s, the phenomenon was over. In 1991, tragedy struck when Red Fox collapsed on set during rehearsals for the royal family. At first, everyone thought he was faking another heart attack gag, but this time it was real, and he passed away at 68. Despite his fame, he died owing millions in taxes. Eddie Murphy stepped in to pay for his funeral, proving how much Fox had inspired the next generation of comedians. Today, though, His legacy is untouchable. He opened doors for black performers on television and showed that comedy could be both hilarious and painfully honest. The forbidden courtroom line, once hidden, now stands as proof of how much he changed the rules. Looking back, Sanford and Son wasn't just another sitcom, it was a turning point in television history. It broke racial barriers, pushed censorship limits, and forced America to laugh at things it didn't always want to face. The hidden scenes, once considered too dangerous to air, now show how bold the creators and cast really were. Red Fox proved that comedy could be more than entertainment, it could be truth. Lamont Sanford represented a younger generation trying to move forward, while Fred held on to the past. Together, they told a story millions could relate to, regardless of race. The laughter was real, the risks were high, and the impact is still felt today. The forbidden scene is no longer hidden, and with it, we're reminded that the best comedy isn't just about jokes, it's about courage, honesty, and the power to make people see the world differently, even from a junkyard in South Central Los Angeles. When we talk about Sanford and Son, it's impossible not to mention the genius of Norman Lear and Bud Yorkin. These two producers didn't just create a sitcom, they reinvented what television could be. Lear was already shaking up the industry, with All in the Family, where Archie Bunker forced audiences to face uncomfortable truths about race, politics, and class. With Sanford and Son, Lear wanted to do something similar, but from a different perspective. Instead of a white working-class man in Queens, this time the focus was a black junk dealer in Los Angeles. Lear and Yorkin believed comedy was the best way to deal with tough issues. They knew people might resist a straight lecture about racism or poverty, but if you wrapped it in a joke, suddenly the conversation opened up. Critics at the time accused them of exploiting stereotypes, but Lear argued back. He said Fred Sanford wasn't a stereotype, he was a survivor, a man using humor to get through life's hardships. This approach became Lear's signature. He wasn't afraid of controversy because he believed laughter was the key to understanding. In many ways, Sanford and Son was just as revolutionary as All in the Family, but with a rhythm, slang, and cultural style that spoke directly to Black America in the 1970s. While Fred Sanford got most of the laughs, Lamont, played by D. Wilson, gave the show balance. Lamont was the frustrated son who wanted more out of life than working in a junkyard. He represented ambition, the desire to escape poverty, and the struggles of a younger generation trying to break free from old ways. Many fans related to Lamont because they saw themselves in him. He was educated, thoughtful, and always trying to pull his father into modern times. Without Lamont, Fred's antics would have gone too far. The comedy worked because Lamont was the straight man who called out his father's nonsense. Off-screen though, DeMont Wilson had his own challenges. He battled drug addiction during the height of the show's fame and admitted years later that the pressure of sudden stardom nearly destroyed him. After the show ended, Wilson walked away from Hollywood completely. He became a Christian minister, focusing on faith and community work. His journey was a reminder that fame doesn't always bring happiness. Yet his role as Lamont left an unshakable mark on television. He gave depth to the show, ensuring it wasn't just about laughs, but also about family bonds, generational struggles, and the push-pull between tradition and progress. If Fred Sanford was the king of insults, Aunt Esther was the queen of comebacks. Played brilliantly by LaWanda Page, Esther brought fire and fury to every scene she was in. Her constant battles with Fred, full of Bible verses and sharp-tongued insults, became some of the most memorable moments of the series. Every time she stormed into the junkyard, fans knew a verbal war was about to begin. What made Esther so important was that she wasn't just comic relief, she was also a symbol of faith, dignity, and resilience. She stood her ground against Fred's constant mockery and represented the strong no-nonsense women found in many families. Interestingly, LaWanda Page was nearly fired after her first rehearsal. Producers thought she was too nervous and couldn't deliver her lines. But Red Fox stepped in and threatened to quit if they replaced her. He had known her from the comedy circuit and believed she just needed confidence. He He was right. Once she relaxed, she became one of the strongest characters on the show.